In today's video, we're going to be talking about aquatic snails and what I consider to be one of the best cleaners you can get for your planted aquarium, why they are commonly referred to as pest snails, and whether you should try them for yourself. So why are they called pest snails? Well, a pest is any living thing, a plant, an organism, or an animal that can have a negative effect on something, particularly when they cause damage or a nuisance. Aquatic snails are usually labelled as such because most people that have them in their aquarium did not intend to have them, as they probably came in on live plants, or maybe they came in in a fish's gut basically. Fish can eat snail eggs, and they can poo them out, and that can obviously cause the snail to grow in your aquarium. When they get into your aquarium, they can reproduce at a rapid rate, especially if there's an abundance of uneaten food in the aquarium. With that in mind, I don't really see aquatic snails as a pest, but something that can be really beneficial to your planted aquarium, because they can tell you a lot about your tank. They can also help to keep it clean of uneaten foods and algae. And a lot of snails that live in our aquariums have both reproductive organs, so they do not need two snails to reproduce. They can actually reproduce with themselves. So there are three that I've found to be the most common that you find in aquariums that are of the pest variety, and I'm going to go over those now. So the first one, and I've got some of these in my tank, and I really like these actually, that is the ram's horn snail. So the ram's horn snail can come in a few different colour variations, so I've got the blue ones here, but you can also get them in pink or red ones, and sometimes you can just see sort of brown coloured ones. So firstly, they get their name due to the fact that their shell looks like a ram's horn. It's as simple as that really. These snails will spend most of their time on surfaces such as on plants, glass, wood, rocks. Very rarely will you see them on the substrate surface unless you drop in some food for them, like an algae wafer or something like that, and they do this really funny thing where you'll see them all make their way down to the algae wafer and they'll just pile on top of it. So this can be quite funny to watch. But unfortunately as well is it can actually stop your other bottom feeders getting to the food. So we'll talk about how you can control numbers a bit later on in the video. But yeah, they can be a bit of an issue. Another thing I've found them to be quite beneficial for actually is if you've got a dead fish in your tank that you haven't noticed, these snails will also pile on top of that as well. So it can be a good sort of indication if you've got a fish that's passed away, and the snails will, like I say, they'll pile on top of it, and that'll just enable you to get in there and remove that fish. I'd never recommend letting the snails eat the fish or any of your shrimp eat the fish, just because that fish might have passed away due to some disease, and really you want to remove that from your tank. But yeah, they can help you identify it and remove it, which is a pretty cool thing to see. The other one, which I've got some of these in my tank as well, is the bladder snail. So the bladder snail is a lot smaller than the ram's horn snail, and to be honest, I don't really like them as much because they don't have the sort of colour variations and the sort of same character really that ram's horn snails do. So yeah, I don't think they really look as nice, but they do a good job as well as the ram's horn snails. So they will get outcompeted if you've got larger snails in your tank like the ram's horn snail. Then the bladder snail will get outcompeted. They're also small enough so some fish may eat them. It depends on what you've got in there. I've seen my cichlids, I've got some epistogramas, and I have seen those eat bladder snails, so it is something that you will see happen, like I said, with them being so small. And again, as both the ram's horn snail and the bladder snail, they both have both reproductive organs, so they don't necessarily need a clear male/female in order to reproduce. So again, with this in mind, this is why that they're known as pests sometimes, because they can reproduce at a rapid rate. But again, we'll cover what you can do about those numbers a bit later in the video. So the other one that's commonly found, and again comes in on plants and things like that, is the Malaysian trumpet snail. Now I believe I've got a few of these in my Tetra community tank. I think I've spotted a couple at the back. But they're very difficult to spot, and the reason for that is because they won't spend much of their time on the glass. You'll find that most of the time they burrow in the sand, which can be beneficial because they help to sort of keep that sand turned over, which in turn prevents, any sort of build-ups and just sort of kicks up some of that dirt and allows you filter time to take it away. The other thing as well is that they're nocturnal. So, as I say, I didn't think I had any of these. It turns out there are a few in my tank. but certainly nowhere near the number of ram's horns or bladder snails that I have. And yeah, like I said, very good at sifting the sand if you've got enough of them, and trapping and sort of releasing those trapped bits of food and eating them. But like I said, you won't see them on the glass or on the hardscape all that often, so you don't always know they're in there. So what are the reasons why I like them? Well, snails are actually detritivores, which means they will feed on dead organisms and waste material. They're also a type of decomposer, so they'll help to break down that waste in the aquarium by eating dead parts of plants, uneaten food, and even sometimes fish poo, especially if there's nothing else to eat. The most common misconception is that people think they will eat live plants, and they may do if there's no other food in the aquarium as a survival instinct. But I've only ever seen this when I've kept them in a snail-only tank with very limited other sources of food going in there. The other reason why people think that they eat your plants is because if there's any dead parts of your plants, so if you've had any plants that have melted back or anything like that, they will eat the dead leaves, and that can give an appearance that they are the ones contributing to those dead leaves. In actual fact, it'll be nutrient deficiencies and maybe sort of trauma through maybe moving your plants from one tank to another, which will cause those plants to die back. So of course those snails will get in there and they will nibble away at those dead parts. In turn, that will also promote the new growth in your plants. So again, can be a very, very beneficial thing to have. And they can also help to decompose any fish poo and fish food that's on the bottom of the tank, if there's nothing else to eat, of course. And this will help to contribute to your tank being an ecosystem, which again is very beneficial to the overall health of the tank. If you keep things like pufferfish and loaches, then you've got a free food source because these fish will eat the snails, which is a bonus, free food. So the reasons why they can be a problem really, so they can be a problem due to the rate, as I've mentioned, in which they reproduce, especially if you overfeed your tank. Now, I'm terrible for overfeeding my tanks, but I only feed my fish once a day, so with that, it generally means I overfeed them. They can also outcompete some of your other bottom feeders for food. As I've mentioned, the ram's horn snails in particular, you'll see them pile on. So if you do drop an algae wafer in there, they will pile on top of it. And there's very little chance for your snail, for your shrimp and other bottom feeders to get near it, which can be annoying. The other thing is that they do tend to eat fish eggs. So if you've got a breeding setup, or even if you've got fish in your community tank that are breeding, then they can eat those fish eggs, which is not great. And the other thing as well is, and I've seen this in my pumps, in one of my tanks, is they can clog your pumps quickly. So you'll see the flow reduce and you might have to clean them just that little bit more. So that's also something just to sort of consider really. They can also increase the bioload on your tank, as it can be quite dirty, especially when you have a lot of them really. However, if you do need to control the numbers, there are several ways that you can do it. So you could bait them by dropping some vegetables in there like carrots and zucchini or courgette. And when there's enough of them on there, you could just remove that and discard it, in the garden or in the bin or whatever you want to do. If you've got predatory fish, as I mentioned, such as pufferfish, loaches, even some bigger cichlids, you could feed them back to them as a food source. As I say, it's a free food source, why not? You could also just remove some by hand. With the ram's horn snails, they're big enough, you could just grab a handful and discard them. The other thing you could do is you could try an assassin snail. So if you're going to try this, I recommend just getting one assassin snail. Assassin snails can't reproduce with themselves, so there's no chance of them overpopulating your tank. But of course, if you put two in there, then you'll have the same issues, so it would be counterproductive. But assassin snails will eat other snails, especially smaller snails than them. So you could just try one assassin snail. That might help you keep those numbers under control, really. So just in closing, in my opinion, snails can be extremely beneficial for your aquarium. They help keep it clean of organics, waste, and some algae in order to help establish an ecosystem within your aquarium. You can control the numbers by both not overfeeding your aquarium, but if you need to remove them manually, you can absolutely do that. But as far as I'm concerned, they definitely do more good than harm. And if you've got planted tanks, I would definitely recommend that you give them a shot, especially the ram's horn snail. I think out of all of them, the ram's horn snail is probably the nicest one out of all of them. So there you go. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Don't forget to hit that like button if you did, and subscribe to the channel if you're new. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. Things are going extremely well at the moment, so I just really want to keep that momentum going. So thank you everybody, as always, and I will see you on the next one. Bye for now.